next week I start baseball. Like, I'm going to be gone. I'm going to miss spring. And he brings me in the office, closed the door, and he was like, you want to be my starting quarterback next year, right? And I was like, yeah. I mean, I think I've proven that. Like, I've done a good job of so far. And he said, well, you're not playing baseball. Sorry.
This podcast is presented by Visa, a network giving small businesses tools to grow, overcoming the odds, rewriting the playbook, delivering under pressure. The MVPs of small business lead their teams to victory all year long. Visa is proud to provide playmakers everywhere with more tools to help grow their businesses and help them achieve even greater success. Because the more people we can empower, the more we all win. Visa, a network giving small businesses tools to grow. Well, on this episode of Beyond the X's and O's, we sit down with A.J. McCarron, and it's a really cool conversation. I start the show by saying, hey, I don't know this guy very well. I mean, most guys we have on the, I have relationships with. A.J., we've crossed paths a couple times, but I didn't know a whole lot about him. So I think there's going to be a little bit different tone to this one. I'm truly asking him questions, interested in the answers, because I don't know the answers. So it's really cool to learn that he was an All-American baseball pitcher, and really had a battle between, does he go professionally in baseball or does he decide to go play college football? One thread that's really interesting is he actually goes back. He starts telling his journey in fourth grade. And I almost wanted to stop and say, well, we don't have to go all the way back to fourth grade. We can just talk about high school. But he talks about winning 4 park ball championships and 2 middle school championships. And this thread of champion definitely fits into AJ's story. And his presence is that as a champion. He speaks like a champion. He works like a champion. Now, he hasn't won a championship in the NFL, but who's to say he's not going to? Really interesting to hear about his time at Alabama, how he decommitted from Oklahoma. I thought that was interesting too, that, he grew up seeing Sam Bradford play and saying, oh, that's what I look like. I want to play for Oklahoma. But he makes this really great decision to go to the University of Alabama. It's not just because it was Nick Saban in Alabama. And I look forward to you hearing that story. He wins back-to-back national championships at Alabama. They were dominant. He's the all-time leading passer there. So just cool stuff about his rich journey at the University of Alabama. And then I really liked how we ended the show. We talked about his time in the NFL briefly, but the guys he's played with. I think about this, Deshaun Watson and Matt Ryan and Derek Carr, Andy Dalton, like pros. And lessons learned watching them, and to hear him brag about Matt Ryan, the guy he's with now in Atlanta, is pretty interesting. So I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. Well, super excited for today's guest, mainly because of all the guests I've had, I know this one the least. Most of the guests you've heard me have on, I have longstanding relationships with. Today, A.J. McCarron joins us, and A.J. and I's paths haven't crossed that much. So I'm as excited as you are to learn about his quarterback journey. AJ, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me, Trent.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. So we start this way with all quarterbacks. Talk to me about your high school experience, and specifically like that Friday night lights experience. Was football the biggest thing going on in the Southeast? You grew up in Mobile, Alabama, St. Episcopal High School. Tell me about what Friday Night Lights was like for you in high school, and your first career start specifically, maybe in that first touchdown pass.
Yeah. So I started football at the age of 3. I was turning 4.
Oh, wow.
I was too big, so I had to play up with the 5-year-olds. And most of my friends that I played with were older anyways. But getting into so from that, just kind of giving a quick background first. So I played park ball, got to win 3 or 4 championships in park ball. Went on to middle school, won 7th and 8th grade championships back-to-back years. At the end of my 8th grade season, they brought me up to varsity to kind of go practice with them and see how I was going to do. And actually I played well in practice, and they wanted me to play in the game, and I just wasn't ready for that yet. But I remember starting the first game of the year, my freshman year, and sat down that morning at the breakfast table, and my dad had the newspaper out, and I remember these two just ginormous humans on the front page of this paper, and we were playing Carver Montgomery High School, and Dad was like, "You know those guys?" I was like, "I don't have a clue. Who are they? They play for college?" And he was like, "That's the two DNs you're going up against tonight."
Oh no!
And so that was the experience right there, because they both ended up signing D1. I forget where, but they were both about 6'4", 6'5", 250.
Oh.
I mean, they were just huge. And Carver was a higher classification than what we were. We were 5A, and they were 6A at the time, which was at that time the biggest in the state of Alabama. So I was not looking forward to that game a whole lot, but I actually played well. We ended up losing by a pretty good bit, and but from there, had a successful year. I think we went to the quarterfinals, and we were a wing tee offense. Yeah. So here I was running the wing tee and waggle pass and belly pass and everything else that came along with it, and trying to run the option, which I wasn't a huge fan of. But so we had a pretty good year. My sophomore year, it was like, okay, we kind of went to a different style offense where it was the wing tee, but it was in a spread formation. It was the strangest thing I've ever been a part of. But it actually, again, we went to the quarterfinals and lost to the Eufaula, who ended up winning the state championship. And then my junior year, we won the state championship. We finally went to spread / pro style offense, and we had a bunch of guys that signed D1 and are actually ended up making it to the NFL too. Wow. So and then my senior year, I was one of two only returning starters on the whole team.
Oh, wow.
For offense and defense, it was a different experience for sure, but it really taught me to kind of put everything on my back and really learn to trust younger players and new players coming in the system, and really helped me grow as a leader to kind of teach them the way things are done and how you do it. And so, but yeah, that's pretty much my high school experience right there. I got to win a state championship, so I'm excited.
Well, I want to drill a little deeper on a couple of things. I want to go all the way back to park ball. So you win a bunch of park ball championships. You win middle school championships. You get to win a high school championship, state championship, obviously, and everybody knows you as a winner. Did you ever take winning for granted? So I go back to your freshman and sophomore year, right? You'd only get to the quarters. You're dealing with this stuff as a young player. You'd always won championships. Was all of a sudden kind of a shock not to actually win the championship?
Well, it was definitely different. And I think the thing that made it, the hardest for us and a lot of my friends, the tough part for me is I was an 8th grade starter on the varsity basketball team. I pitched in the varsity baseball playoffs as an 8th grader. So all my friends, I was always with an older crowd.
Yeah.
So all my friends were that older group. And we had really all played multiple sports, grew up together. So it actually was tough because we knew the type of talent we had. Just during that whole process. Like I said, a bunch of those guys even we played park ball together when we won park ball championships, and we did travel football and played in all these tournaments. back then. They're much bigger now, but back then they had a couple tournaments around the country, and we would win those. So literally that's all we knew was winning. And then when you get to that point and it's like you're getting so close, but it's just not working out. And we finally end up putting it together my junior year. But yeah, for sure, it was definitely, gut wrenching at the same time, a great learning experience for us as a collective group, just to kind of figure out, all right, hey, we need to figure out how we can take this next step forward. Why do we keep making it to this point and then can't get past? So it was definitely a shock, but I felt like it helped our team my junior year and most of those guys senior year to really finally achieve the ultimate goal.
It's been a really consistent thread in all these conversations with quarterbacks, especially the Hall of Famers, that the dual sport part of their athletic journey was a huge part of it and allowed them to become a better football player. You talked about pitching and playing on the varsity basketball team as an eighth grader. Can you look back now and see all the other ways playing the other sports benefited you?
No, a ton. One thing, so a lot of people don't know. So I was an All-American baseball player out of high school.
Oh,
wow. And as a pitcher. And so I started at shortstop, but I was ace pitcher. And so at an early age, growing up pitching, my dad, who was a really good baseball player in high school during his day, and he would never let me throw the same way 2 times in a row.
Interesting.
So it really helped me grow. I think that's what helped me in my career. And it's funny because, you have and everybody does. Everybody goes through, has a stigma about him where it's like, oh, well, he's just whether it's a game manager or his arm strength's not that. And then when I get here in Atlanta and the first week or so, I'm throwing it and changing arm angles and everything. And Dave Rags, Ragone, and he's like, dude, I had no clue that you could throw the ball like you can throw it. And I said, well, it's, it's something that's just not been listed for me. But yeah, I can throw off platform and everything. But I say all that to say what helped me is the fact that my dad told me, like, listen, however you throw it on 0-0 count, the first pitch, like that next pitch, I don't care if the first one was a ball or a strike, do not throw the same way. So I would start out over the top. The next pitch would be 3/4, but I would change my motion at the same time too. So the second pitch might be pause up here and then get back into it. Every once in a while, I'd drop all the way down and throw completely sidearm. And I threw all my pitches from multiple arm angles too. And when it came to football, I think that really helped me be able to stand in the pocket. And as you know better than anybody, like in the NFL, getting a clean pocket's slim to none. So you got to be able to throw from tight quarters, to be able to change arm angles. I mean, it's what Drew Brees did so great in his, awesome Hall of Fame career was be able to throw through windows and tunnels in the pocket. So definitely baseball and playing other sports helped me tremendously.
Were you drafted in baseball, or was it ever a conversation of maybe playing, pursuing baseball more than football?
Yeah. So I had to call, oh man, I can't remember how many teams before draft day we had to call and say, listen, I'm going to go the football route and just, I don't want you to pick me and waste a pick.
Wow.
And I had 8 teams tell me, met with us and said, listen, you could be taken high. And I just felt like football was just something I really wanted to do and wanted to kind of push myself in that game. And so the plan was, when I first got to Alabama, was, hey, I'm going to play. I'm going to take this first year and focus strictly on football. Because I really wanted to win the backup job my freshman year. And well, I achieved that going into the bye week of my freshman year. It was before we played LSU. So I think it was like week 7, if I remember correctly. And got named back up. And so after that season's over, well, you got Greg McElroy returning back in 2010, and he was a starter. And so I'm like, well, I'm going to go play baseball. Like, this is the plan the whole time. This is what me and Saban had talked about, agreed to. And so I go in his office when after football, spring's close to coming around, baseball starting up, and I'm like, hey, listen, next week I start baseball. Like, I'm going to be gone. I'm going to miss spring. And he brings me in the office, closed the door, and he was like, you want to be my starting quarterback next year, right? And I was like, yeah. I mean, I think I've proven that. Like, I've done a good job of so far. And he said, well, you're not playing baseball. Sorry.
I knew where that conversation was going.
Yeah.
So we're going to go to a break, AJ.
Yep.
But when we get back, I want to go backwards a little bit and talk a little bit more about your recruiting journey, this dilemma of baseball, football, and then obviously your time at Alabama. We'll be right back with A.J. McCarron. This podcast is presented by Visa, a network giving small businesses tools to grow, overcoming the odds, rewriting the playbook, delivering under pressure. The MVPs of small business lead their teams to victory all year long. Visa is proud to provide playmakers everywhere with more tools to help grow their businesses and help them achieve even greater success. Because the more people we can empower, the more we all win. Visa, a network giving small businesses tools to grow. All right, so you touched on it, and you kind of told us the story with Nick Saban, but let's go backwards. Let's go. I'm assuming you were recruited your junior year. Was that pretty typical back then? I mean, I'm so old. I didn't get recruited to my senior year, and now my players getting recruited as freshmen. So I'm assuming that was when it was more traditional, really recruiting picked up your junior year in high school.
Yeah, I mean, that's when I started getting a ton of offers. I got my first offer at the end of my freshman year. We went and played in a 7-on-7 tournament at LSU, and Les Miles was the coach then, and we made it. Our high school, we ended up winning the whole thing, and down there, and they had teams from all over, and every team in Louisiana, school in Louisiana. And so we ended up going down there, team from Mobile, we're the only one. We win the whole thing. And he brought, it was me, Mark Barron, a guy, a running back named Ivan Matchett, receiver Destin Hood, who signed with the Washington Nationals first round coming out of high school in baseball. Wow. And it was like 4 or 5 of us, and brought us all in the office and offered everybody right then.
Wow.
And so that was my first, I guess you could say verbal offer, but recruiting for sure definitely picked up.
Well, that's interesting. After that, real quick before you go on, because I don't want to lose this and have to come back to it, because it's an interesting dynamic here. You already mentioned, you would already, as an 8th grader, you had been playing up with the older kids. So relationally, that could be awkward. I'm not saying it was, but I could see that being an issue at some point with some of your friends that are in 8th grade with you, and you're hanging out with an older crowd. Now you come back after your freshman year, you go down, you're the big dog at an LSU 7-on-7 tournament, and you get your first offer. What was that like coming back to campus? And because there's 15-year-olds listening to this, and they're like, yeah, man, that would be overwhelming. What was it like on campus on the weekends with your buddies? I mean, I could assume, and I'm a parent, so I could assume that being a little awkward, that AJ, the big dog, playing with older kids and going down to LSU and getting the offers. Was there any friction there, or were your boys and they were happy for you?
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely. It was tough at first. And I should say, for me, hanging out with the older crowd was never a problem. I had hung out with my cousin. My cousin's one of my best friends in the world, and he was like, we were two peas in a pod. Just wherever you saw him, you saw me growing up. So I was always hanging around him and his older friends. So the process for me hanging out with older guys, and I've always been my mom says an older spirit, but it definitely did cause probably some conflict for the kids in my grade. It probably made certain relationships tough and hard, but I also felt like it also brought out the true people that supported me and were actually my friends at the same time, because they didn't let the jealousy of being able to play up for them affect our relationship and our friendship. So it definitely, tough for people who you thought were your friends. But I felt like it also, uncovered who was actually there and rooting for you and a true friend.
That's awesome. Great advice for young people to take in to kind of know who your true friends are and who the guys are just hanging on to be around you to be a part of your success. All right, keep going with your recruiting. Right. So obviously it's going to pick up. You're going to start getting all these offers, and kind of take me through this journey of growing up in the Southeast. Football is just different. I can say that being a California kid. I've lived in Texas, been around Texas 6A football. Now that I'm in the Southeast, it just means more here. So you're in the Southeast, you're in Mobile, you're going through this recruiting process. Everybody wants you. Kind of take us on that journey. What was that and what that was like?
Yeah, it was, I'd go back and talk to high school kids back home in Mobile every off season and spend time around multiple high schools and summer workouts and 7-on-7 sessions with them. And I'll go to a high school every once in a while and join in with them just to have some fun. But I try to tell them, like, it's literally the best time of your life. I mean, these schools are paying for you to come on visits. They're showing you the red carpet. It's something that I try to tell kids. I was had a little bit of it towards the end and committed early, but man, take every visit you can possibly take. I mean, it's once in a lifetime opportunity. You're never going to be able to get it back. And you don't want to go through that time. And, when you get older and be like, I wish I would have taken a trip here, or, gone and seen that school. I really think it's the best time of your life. And it was awesome. It was awesome for me. I remember just taking multiple trips all over. I was wanting to stick, in the South somewhere for me. It was I was not a huge fan just because I've never experienced it growing up. But going to a place that had snow was not one of my top choices. So I remember. Funny story. So Purdue coaching staff, I can't remember who was their head coach
Tiller?
at the time, but
was it Tiller?
My dad would know better.
We can look it up. That's a Google story. That Google thing's pretty smart.
Yeah, exactly. But they came and watched a basketball game of mine, and it was probably my junior year of high school, and so I was a starting point guard, and they're there watching. And they started talking to my dad. It's a couple minutes into the game, and he's like, "So, Mr. McCarron, what's the chance of us getting AJ? And would he be interested?" And my dad's like, "Yeah, like, he knows, Drew played there, and but." He's like, does it snow there? And my dad was kind of playing the game up too. And he's like, yeah, we get snow. So AJ doesn't like the snow. And then Dad felt bad, but it was funny at the same time. If you know my dad, he's just goofy. But he was like, and to be honest, Coach, like, I don't even know where Purdue is. And so it was like halftime, and the two coaches got up and left. I don't think I ever got a call back from Purdue, but I love the recruiting process. I just remember all the visits. Like Ole Miss was a blast. I definitely got funny stories for days, but
Oh, I'm sure.
it was. It came down to I wanted to sign with Oklahoma. You had Coach Stoops, you had Josh Heupel,
Yep.
and I just loved the offense. I liked how they ran it with Sam Bradford at the time, and I
And you
just
have a
felt
lot of
like
similarities to Sam. Like people forget that name, but watching the two you guys play in college, you're very similar athletes, similar throwers. So I could see
right.
why you could see yourself watching Sam play at Oklahoma.
Yeah, exactly. And I just love the fact that they spread the ball around
Yep.
and let Sam go to work. And so I was going to commit to Oklahoma. I told my parents the night before we had the little ceremony deal, and they were extremely happy. But I could tell something was off, and so they sat me down, and I come from my background and history of our family. We come from absolutely nothing. My mom worked 4 jobs. I grew up in a trailer park a lot of my life, and in a rough part of Mobile. And my dad was a fireman, making pretty much minimum wage, running into burning buildings, and he did 3 or 4 jobs also. And so when they sat me down and they said, "Listen, we're super happy for you, love you. Like, just know we're not going to be able to come watch you
Mm.
play that much." And so I said, "Well, what other places could you come watch me play?" And said, "Listen, the easiest for us is just driving up to Auburn or Alabama because we can hop in the car and go, and or we can carpool with friends that are going to the game." And so the next day, I surprised them, pulled out a Alabama hat, and decided to go to Alabama, and the rest is history. So I decided to go with Alabama. One, I had a great relationship with Coach Saban, and still to this day, we get along great and love him to death. But the ultimate reason was just so my parents could watch me play, because I felt like wherever I went, I was you're gonna have to compete, but I felt like my talents would prevail. The hard work that I put in, and the way I go about business is what was going to help me end up playing.
I never knew that story. It's so cool. And I think it's important. Again, and one of the reasons we do the show, AJ, is because I want young kids to listen to it and learn from your guys' journeys, whether you're Brett Favre or AJ McCarron or anything in
Right.
between.
Yeah.
Um, you follow these recruiting services and you never hear that part of it, right? You hear about
Right.
offers and what they rank in the recruiting class and, chance to go to the NFL, and they sell you all the flash and sizzle, but there's reality to
Yeah.
the recruiting process that it takes everybody to get you where you're at. Like you didn't get there by yourself. So your parents are a huge
No.
part of that. And your
Right.
parents want to be on the journey with you. And I would
Mm-hmm.
encourage a lot of young people listening that take that into account as you're being recruited. Like, how's this going to affect your family, your parents, your sister, your aunts, your uncles, your grandparents? Because they all probably played a role in you getting to where you're at right now and having these opportunities
For
to go to
sure.
these colleges. So I'm so glad you shared that story. What a great story. And of course, we had
Yeah.
Greg McElroy on, and who he talked a lot about going in and being part of Nick establishing a culture there. And you hadn't gone through, you're being recruited. He hasn't gone through a full 4-year cycle of recruiting yet, right? You get in there in his 3rd year. Is that
Right.
correct?
Yeah, he got there 07. So 07, 08, and then I was the 09
Yep.
class.
So as you go there, and you are a very confident guy, I love that in your game, and you feel confident you're going to go there and win the backup job. But as he's building that culture, and as he's establishing the core values, and as they're starting to get back to national title, contending for national titles, what was that like? Like, was it a culture shock for you? Was it something you were anticipating? Had you heard stories, the guys you're going in with? Like, what was the shock and awe of going to the University of Alabama and getting the full Nick Saban?
Yeah, really and truly. I never had, and I don't know why, but I never had a moment that was like a true shock. Now, I knew like it was going to be tough playing for Coach Saban because of the amount of work that he makes you put in and everything. But at the same time, like I was always and the reason I say it because I brought up the stories of being young and having to play up. Like I always had to work extra hard. And I was always in that same boat. So like working hard and doing extra once practice was over or when nobody's watching, just like having fun. And I would go throw into the net. Like I knew where they kept the net and I'd just pull it out on the weekends. Like I didn't feel like going out. I'd just go out there. Like I got in trouble for staying in the building too long. So I would literally just go there because I knew nothing else. So the way I grew up, like I said, not having any money or anything, and the only time we could go see a movie, which we didn't know any better growing up, but at the time was when our area we lived in had a dollar movie theater, and and we thought it was the new movies coming out, but movies that have been out for a year or two. So we're going there and thinking, oh, we're about to see this new movie. Granted, like it's been out, but so for growing up that way, really, like I had nothing else other than playing sports. I mean, when we wanted to go do something, it was like, hey, let's go up to the park. Like we had baseballs, we had footballs, we had basketballs. Like we just spent all day at the park playing outside. We didn't have game systems and all that. And so it was really just when I got to college, and I say all that, when I got to college, I think that's what really, truly helped me was because that's all I knew growing up. That's all I did. And so, yeah, it was hard work, but it was nothing, and the pressure that came with it was nothing that I felt like I've never had on myself or put on myself with not wanting to let myself down, really let my family down, because I felt like it was a chance to change our last name. Changing to where not only, my future and future kids that I was dreaming of at that time, having in my own family, but the family that is present with me, my mom, my dad, my brother, like I wanted the McCarron last name to be known. And that was the biggest thing for me. Was what pushed me is my dad would always say, we don't give you a lot, but we did give you this last name, and always treat it with respect, and everybody that came before you with this last name, and carry it on and build it and make it better. So that's all I cared about, and that's really what pushed me when I got to college.
Well, that's huge. And young people that are watching, listening, I will say this, and AJ has touched on, if you're not playing for something bigger than yourself, you won't make it. Like you'll get to a certain point. Your talent may take you somewhere, but you won't make it where AJ's made it, where I've made it, where the guys on the show have made it, because ultimately you got to be playing for something bigger yourself. For AJ, it was the name on the back of his jersey and his family and the kids that he now has. So thanks for sharing that. We do have to go to another break, but I'm dying to ask this one question because Greg kind of teased it when he was on the show.
Yeah.
He talked about every throw being charted at the University of Alabama and everything you do being evaluated. This is the way we do it here too, where I coach. So I'm curious, what does a quarterback competition looks like? You were in one and you won the backup job early on. What does that quarterback competition look like at the University of Alabama?
Yeah, it was tough. And the thing that, pushed me also was when I had signed with Alabama, you always hear, from anybody that ever doubts you is you're never going to play there. At the time, they had signed Star Jackson, the class before me. Star Jackson was the number one dual threat QB in the country coming out of Florida. And he had all this hype coming in, and it was just something that I just never feared. Like I've always had, and I had to change my game a little bit as I became the starter at Alabama to play within the system, put the team first, to help us win, whatever it took. But when I first got there, I was like Brett Favre was my all-time favorite quarterback. Like I didn't grow up watching any true team. I was never a fan, but I could sit there and watch film and watch him all day long. So when I first got there, I would just sling it. Like I didn't care if I thought I could fit it in there. Like I was throwing it, and I guess it was just a little bit of don't care in your system, but I always hated for people to doubt me. Like I loved it, but it's a love-hate deal relationship, and it really pushed me and really created a fire within me, and it helped me, even after that, because Starr ends up transferring the next year. I'm going in to my first year starting, and they're signing the number 1 overall QB in the country, in Phillip Sims out of Virginia. And Phillip's one of my good friends and love him to death. But here he comes in. He's the number 1 rated quarterback in the country out of high school. It was the whole process over again. Like, you're never going to play. Like, this guy's coming in. And so it really helped me even more, just the work ethic that I had to put in, and going back to my roots of, putting in work when nobody's watching, and helping you succeed. So, definitely the QB competition, and anywhere in the country now, the way recruiting is, but it's definitely something special. The QB process and competition at
Well, brought out the best in you because you had an illustrious career at Alabama. When we get back from our second break, we will talk about that incredible career at Alabama and his time in the NFL. We'll be right back. Beyond the X's and O's is brought to you by State Farm. Just like State Farm offers surprisingly great rates for your car insurance, I want to share with you a surprisingly great moment from my career, and it came from Super Bowl 35, and it came actually when I was playing terribly. I started off the game brutal, couldn't hit anything, missed Brandon Stokely wide open on a crossing route, and Jamal Lewis in the flat. I didn't have enough energy. We're at a TV timeout. I'm sitting there in the huddle waiting for the play call to come in, and we substitute Sam Gash onto the field. And Sam Gash, my favorite teammates of all time, comes up to me, grabs me by the chest plate, and says, "We need your juice. We need your energy. You're not yourself today." I said, "You know what? You're right." And immediately I had that spark. The hair on my arm stood up, and that was the series through the first touchdown to Brandon Stokely of Super Bowl 35. And that's why I love the journey of the quarterback. There's so many surprisingly great lessons to be learned from this unique position. And remember, whether you're a Super Bowl winning quarterback or an armchair QB relaxing happily at home, State Farm provides coverage that meets your needs at a price that fits your budget. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. All right, back with A.J. McCarron, and we touched on how the competition brought out the best in him. Well, you win the job. You're the starter your second year. I'm just going to tee you up. I could read some stats. I mean, you're incredibly successful. You're the all-time leading passer at the University of Alabama, all that stuff. But just walk me through, okay, you're the dude now. It's your show. You're playing for Nick Saban. That experience running the show for Nick Saban.
Yeah, I mean, it was awesome. It was something I'll always cherish. At that time, I knew we had probably the best team I had ever been a part of, was actually our 2010 team. When I was still the backup, we lost 3 games that year, which blew my mind because we won it in 2009. And we turned around that year, and I told my dad, and I'm like, this is the most talent I've ever seen on a team. Like, if people think our 2009 team was good, and we went undefeated, like, people don't have a chance this year. And we just had games where, we didn't play well. We weren't as close of a team as we were in 2009. And you just had people that you could tell, like, we had success the year before. It was like, okay, like, pros are coming up, draft, like, other things are just starting to get on people's minds. And I think it's what Saban says all the time is, how do you deal with success? Like, can you handle it or can you not? And so but going into 2011, I knew we were going to have a great team again. Our defense was going to be great. I knew I would have to change my game because of the style of offense that we ran under Jim McElwain, and I love Mac to death. But it was going to be a run first deal and play action, and I remember Saban telling me, like, if each possession ends in a punt or each possession ends in some type of kick, we're all right.
Kick,
and
yep.
so
I've had to play that way too, brother. Trust me, I know.
And so I'm like, okay, now I get it, like what I'm supposed to be doing. So my job was, hey, we might ask you to win us a game every once in a while, but your job right now is to don't lose it. So,
yep.
And we had that one loss that year to LSU and the so-called game of the century, 9-6. And I really, that game didn't play like myself at all. Like I play with emotion. It's the way I was raised. It was, how I was brought up, like the type of neighborhood we grew up in. Like you just had to have a chip on your shoulder and have some, swagger about you. And so I really tried to hold that in that game. I remember a receivers coach coming to me and telling me the quarterback that keeps his emotions in check and doesn't let it get the best of him this game, that's who wins this ball game. And I played that game, and I'm like, and after the game, I told my dad, I said, Dad was like, what was going on tonight? And I was like, I tried to change my game, and it really ticked me off at the end because it's not who I was. And literally after that, Coach Saban was like, listen, I don't care like how you play, just be you from now on.
Oh,
and
thank God.
Yeah, and it really helped me. And
can I interrupt for a sec? I want to go on a rant, and I want you to do 98% of the talking on this show. I just have to stop you there because it is maybe the number one thing I see as I've traveled the country since 11, doing the Elite 11, and I was a high school coach. Is somewhere along the line, some quarterback coach read in a book that everybody has to be Joe Montana.
Yeah,
and I've seen it ruin more quarterbacks than help. Young quarterbacks, if you're listening, God wired you a certain way. Your family has raised you a certain way. Your neighborhood has raised you a certain way. There's nothing wrong with being you. The challenge is to become a better version of you as you grow in the quarterback position. So yeah, poise may be added on top of fire.
Right.
But over time, and AJ can tell you this, he's been in the NFL for a long time. I was in the NFL for a long time, but I always use Phillip Rivers as an example. Phillip Rivers is as prickly as you can find on the football field. Hall of Fame career, and as prickly as you'll find. He's less prickly late in his career when he retired than he was in the beginning, but he was still prickly. Nobody ever tried to make him anything he wasn't. Drew Brees, same as just a better version of what he was in college. Aaron Rodgers, cynical, sarcastic, crap talker, was that way at junior college, then at Cal, now in the NFL. He's just becoming a better version of it. So quarterback coaches, if you're trying to get your kids to be stoic and have shown no emotion and nothing bothers them, if that's not how they're wired, you're ruining them, not helping them. Right. So I'm so glad you told that. I'm going to shut up. You keep going. I just had to interject it. We may even cut this from the show, but I could not use this opportunity to kind of stand on my soapbox and see the shrapnel I've seen by these guys trying to change who these quarterbacks are.
No, I'm in 100% agreement with you. And the crazy thing is, it's not just high school coaches. Like, and I'm sure you've seen it.
It's the NFL. It happened to me.
It happened to me. Up to the league.
Yes.
And the thing that I love about being here, and I've had great coaches, but when I first got to Atlanta this year, and I had Rags and Art literally say, listen, I'm not a QB guru. Like, I'm going to give you pointers, both of us, but I want you, and it was the first time somebody really sat me down and said, I want you to play the way, however you want to play. Like, however you want to throw the ball, like, do it. Because he, like I said, Rags saw me in changing arm angles. He was like, dude, like, If you turn the ball over every once in a while, I don't care. Like, I'm going to take what you've been showing me and how you can throw it, and in practice, like, I'm going to take the good with the bad. Like, it's just going to come. So I think more good's going to come out of it if you just let free and just play loose like you've been doing. So that was the first time, like, but I've seen it from high school to college to NFL, and it's kind of crazy. But I'm 100% agreeing with you.
Bro, I had it yesterday. I was with my quarterback, who's one of the best in the country, and we have kind of one of these either or plays. You know what I mean? We call them advantage plays. Like, it's good run, it's a good pass. You kind of make the, and he's trying to get all technical with it. Well, if the safety's there, and I said, bro, I trust you. You probably play the position better than I did. So you do what makes sense to you.
Yeah.
And he just kind of looked at me and was like, thanks. You know, like I have the ball in my hand. I'm going to play better when I make that decision. I don't need to be micromanaged. So it sounds like you're finally getting to go through that and be the best version of you because you're free.
Exactly. And like I said, I've had unbelievable coaches throughout my career, and but this was the first times, and you always have that, mindset of you're going to play like yourself. But this was the first time in my career somebody had actually sat me down and said, "Hey, like, I want you to play however you think you play best." And that was refreshing. And I told Art and them, I'm like, man, that was awesome to hear. 8 years I've been in the league, I've never heard that. Like, I've never had a coach be like, "Hey, you got to play this way." Thank God in my career, but at the same time, I had never had anybody sit me down and be like, "Listen, I want you to play however you want." So that was refreshing. And but yeah, I mean, better than anybody how many games you've played in. You definitely can't go out thinking, "Oh, am I going to get in trouble if I do this?" Like,
it's the
worst. Like, you have already failed before you even started, so it's not going to turn out any better.
It's not fun. So I've taken you all over the map, and I'm sorry, I've taken this show off the rails. Everybody wants more of the Alabama stuff because legendary career. And please, if you're a young person, you don't just Google AJ and his career at Alabama. Again, he's all-time passing leader there, two-time national title winner. So get back a little more. You kind of talked about 2011, get into 2012, 2013, kind of that journey and just kind of the players you played with. And now the culture's built, it's established, and you really were a foundation builder to what's become the greatest college football program in the history of football.
Yeah, no, it's definitely special. After we had won it, leading back to 2011, like leading up to the national championship game, we had that back in the day. The young kids don't know about it anymore, but back in the day, you had about a month off before you played in the national championship or January bowl game, and so we had like 36 days off, and we're starting practice back and everything. And Saban had come to me and said, "Listen, this championship game, like, we're putting it on you. Do you want it?" And I was like, I've been wanting this all year.
Thank you.
Let's go. And we literally, like, the whole plan, the whole game was first down, second down, like, we're slinging it. We're going to get them in one-on-one opportunities, and we're going to take advantage of it. And who was the coordinator? Chavis.
At LSU?
His first name, but
Chavis, I think, was
it was Chavis, but I just but so we knew, like, we got in certain formations, slot formations. They always went.
Did they bring corners over so you knew it from the snap?
Yeah,
yep.
Right. You knew it from the snap. So I was literally, like, we were just taking advantage of it, and I played one of my best games, and then I told my dad, though, leading up to that game, I said, "Listen, we're gonna beat LSU by 21 points." And he said, "You lost to them during the year. Like, how do you think you're gonna beat them?" I said, "We're gonna beat them by 3 touchdowns. I promise you." And my dad thought I had made a deal with the devil at the time, but we went 21-0, and so going into my junior year, I knew we were going to be I felt like even more talented on offense. Defense we were going to lose some key players, but offensively, we were going to be able to open it up a little bit more during that time of Saban's era was quite a bit. And we had Doug Nussmeier coming in as the OC, and so Nuss's background being in Washington with Jake Locker was, it's more spread. They were going to sling it and everything. So I was excited, but going into that year, I mean, we were on fire. Played well, had the close game against LSU, turned around the next week, lose to Texas A&M with Johnny Football, and ended up clawing our way back to play in the SEC championship game, and then play Notre Dame. And I remember, and I have buddies that played on that Notre Dame team that we played in the national championship, but I remember turning on the film during that long break, and I probably should say this.
I know exactly what you're going to say, because those of us in the football community saw the same film, and we were like, "Uh-oh."
So I turned on. They played Pitt that year in a triple overtime game at Pitt, and Pitt might have been one of the worst football teams I'd ever seen, and the fact that they went into triple overtime, I told my dad, I said, we might beat Notre Dame by 42 points. And he said, all right, listen, I thought you were nuts last year. Like, you're absolutely insane this year. I'm like, I'm telling you, it's not even going to be close. And we ended up beating them, 49-14 or something, like 42-14. And my dad, again, was like, who are you making a deal with? Like nobody. I just literally turn on the film, and that was I knew they were in trouble. But and then leading into my senior year, man, I wish it's a little bit of, and you can put it on the older leaders, myself and other guys, but my senior year we were talented again. And heck, I think 1 second away, kick six against Auburn of winning 3 in a row. I mean, we go on. If you win that game, you play Mizzou in the SEC championship. You beat Missouri, I think, pretty bad, and then you chance to play Florida State in the national championship. Which, heck, I mean, Auburn was beating them bad, and then at halftime, they came out second half and totally changed their game plan. But it seemed like, we were literally 1 second away from possibly going for a three-peat, and that would have been really special. But I can't complain about my time. To win back-to-back 3 championships total, 2 as a starter, and then those being back-to-back was just something that literally it helped change, my ultimate goal. And the reason I went to Alabama and started football, or seriously started to engage in football and take it to another level, was to change my last name. And I felt like going there and achieving and working hard and just achieving everything we did definitely changed the McCarron last name and helped it be known, and that's what makes me happy and just proud, that even for my boys, like my oldest plays t-ball, and he loves copying the same number that his dad wears, and seeing the last name on the jersey. It's just it's special, and everybody knows, like, when he goes up to the plate, back home, is, oh, that's AJ's son. And so it's awesome, and it makes me very happy and proud to know that I helped, and it's not just me, but helped achieve a part of the whole team, my team, family, everybody that was part of the whole process, that we achieved it all together, and it's special.
Oh, it's incredible. I'm so glad you shared that. We'll finish your time with this. I do want to be respectful of your time. You talked about this really early when you were talking about how you grew up.
Mm-hmm.
And you actually said this term, the work when nobody's watching, right? We call it the lonely work. You don't get celebrated for it. It's not posted on Instagram. All this stuff that we kind of as older guys look at and roll our eyes at. But I want to take this a little bit different direction. You've actually played with some pretty incredible players in the same quarterback room: Matt Ryan, Derek Carr, Deshaun Watson, Andy Dalton. I mean, these guys are pros. Have you noticed, and this is your kind of time to put a bow on this conversation and talk to the young people, like, what is the commonality between these guys? It's not just talent. It's kind of what you talked about. It's this lonely work. It's something. I'm not going to put words in your mouth. What is it?
Yeah, I literally think it's the daily grind.
Mm-hmm.
Like just the amount of time, like for instance, this year, the amount of time that Matt Ryan puts in, like I never knew Matt going into this, but the amount of respect that I have for him, his game, one, he's just first class person, awesome friend, but to see the amount of time that he puts into his craft, because you're always trying to master your own craft, which you're never going to really achieve. But because once you achieve one goal, it's, I can get better at this. And so, like, you're never going to master it. But the amount of work he puts in to his craft to try to master it, he is special. And every guy that you mentioned, every guy that I've been a part of in the league, Andy, Derek, Deshaun, like, they're all good friends of mine, and it's unbelievable, and it's just awesome to see the success they have, knowing the type of work that they put in behind closed doors, and especially when nobody's posting on Instagram or Twitter or whatever, and filming it. That's the hardest time.
It really is. I appreciate your time, man. I've enjoyed this so much because, again, like I started the show with, I don't know you. Our paths really haven't crossed. I've admired your career. I've admired how you conduct your business. I like your fire, man. Always loved your fire. So keep being you. Good things are ahead of you. That's the other thing, audience, you need to understand is AJ's in his 8th year. Now the quarterback position, you can play for 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
So you haven't heard the last from AJ McCarron. He's going to be a player in this league, and I'm excited for your future. And thanks for spending time on Beyond the X's and O's.
Of course, Trent. I appreciate it, man. It was an honor being on, and you're definitely somebody that I looked up to. Watching you play during your time in Baltimore was unbelievable.
I appreciate you, man. Thank you. Thanks again to AJ and his time. What a cool conversation. And thanks again to our friends at State Farm. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Call or go to statefarm.com for a quote today.